have to bring you this story from DropSite. This is F20. We can put it up on the screen. This is a new post that reveals more about a story that mattered a lot to me personally back in 2020, because one of the groups implicated in this new DropSite report was targeting the Federalist when I worked at the Federalist. And we've come to find out, thanks to DropSite's reporting, and it's actually an excerpt from a book by author Paul Holden. Paul Holden reports in The Fraud, Keir Starmer, Morgan McSweeney, and the Crisis of British Democracy that Starmer's chief of staff, and I'll just read the lead paragraph here. Starmer's chief of staff is named Morgan McSweeney, so keep that in mind. Paul Holden writes, as Keir Starmer rose to power in Britain, the political machine responsible for his rise ran a behind-the-scenes campaign to demonetize the U.S. news outlet Breitbart. The attacks on Breitbart were part of a targeted campaign against media outlets on both the left and right considered hostile to the centrist faction of the Labour Party, according to a trove of documents that expose the operation. So, where Holden goes with this is basically that McSweeney started a group. It was resourced by a think tank called Labour Together, so obviously related to the Labour Party, and as Paul writes, quote, under the guise of fighting misinformation and fake news. Between 2018 and 2020, according to Holden, the anodyne-seeming think tank received about £740,000 in donations that it failed to report, that's another fun part of the story, to the UK Electoral Commission, and then Labour Together was found guilty and fined back in September 2021 for the offence. Morgan McSweeney is now, again, PM Keir Starmer's chief of staff, very powerful position right now, managing director of Labour Together at that time. And so Paul Holden writes, the prominent UK journalist in 2024 commented that Morgan McSweeney held the position, quote, of unparalleled power in Labour Party history. So Ryan was telling me about this story. Ryan Graham obviously oversees a lot of DropSite, and he's telling me about this story, and I'm like, wait a second. Are you going to say that this had something to do with the Center for Countering Digital Hate? Because as he was describing the reporting, we were about to talk about it on Breaking Points this morning. He was describing the reporting to me, and I was like, I stopped him before he said the Center for Countering Digital Hate. And he was like, yes, I think that is part of the story. So I'm looking into this and I'm like, the CCDH, funny enough, I'm very familiar with the CCDH. Take a look at this. This is a report in the Federalist in 2020. It's a recap of NBC's failed attempt to deplatform the Federalist on Google. If you go through the story, you can find it on the internet, but it will get you up to speed. This is again from 2020. NBC reported, the story says, that Google took action based on its work with the United Kingdom's, quote, Center for Countering Digital Hate that alleged Federalist reporting, which exposed legacy media's deceptive coverage of recent civil unrest, violated company guidelines. How hours after NBC's initial dispatch, however, Google released a statement contradicting NBC's claims and claiming that the tech giant had threatened sanctions on the Federalist, not for its journalism, but for content in its comment sections, which the website has temporarily disabled, but has promised will be back. All right, let's just stop right there. You just heard the craziest cocktail of things happening in one story. A journalist was uncritically laundering a BS NGO's report about other journalists to a big tech company to suppress those journalists. So this was Ben Collins, who was like the misinformation at NBC News at the time. He is the boyfriend of Kat Abugazaleh in Chicago, who's like throwing herself in front of ICE vehicles in protest. But Ben Collins went and took this report from what we now know was a Keir Starmer Labour op, a foreign operation that was trying to change the boundaries of free speech in the United States of America, where we are by no means perfect, but we have a way superior system to what goes on in the United Kingdom. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They are trying to come in. And Ben Collins, a journalist, A journalist does their work for them so very eagerly, gladly launders their little white paper, takes it to a big tech company. Again, as a reminder, journalists are supposed to be skeptical, hostile to concentrated power, whether that's our government, a foreign government, or a big tech company. And here's Ben Collins saying, Google, I have information, and you must take action. Now, of course, he didn't put it that way, but he knew damn well what he was doing. He was threatening to report that Google was just going to allow the disinformation machine of the Federalist to keep running rampant. Just keep spewing disinformation out into the universe if it didn't take action. And so he was going to blast them on NBC News. That's exactly what was happening. We all know it. And come to find out, that report Collins uncritically laundered about Google taking action against someone else's comment section, which is hilarious because of the YouTube comment section that Google itself oversees, to demonetize the Federalist at the time could have easily put us out of business. It could have easily wiped out all of the coverage that the Federalist then did. When you go back and look at it, and I was an editor there at the time, so I'm intimately familiar with a lot of that reporting on COVID, a lot of that reporting on Biden, a lot of that reporting on many things that we were told nobody could talk about during the pandemic that have since been completely vindicated over and over again. All of that could have gone away if it was like Jim Jordan and some others who rallied and said, Google, what are you doing? And it had a resolution. The Federalist comment section came back and all of that. But this story now shows that basically NBC News was doing the work of a foreign government. And maybe could have dug a little deeper at who was funding this group, by the way. I maybe asked around, been like, this seems a little iffy. Is this like a labor op? And figured out that it was irresponsible. It's irresponsible either way to demand that other journalists be suppressed and to demand massive technology companies censor journalists as a journalist. I mean, it's just such a disgusting thing to do that is completely anathema to the profession. And it was this, I remember people cheerleading this in the quote mainstream media at the time that it happened. And now Dropsite reporting from Paul Holden here is showing that they were going after, this is a foreign political party, secretly at the time, going after trying to narrow the boundaries of acceptable discourse in the United States. How dare they? And how dare a reporter help them do that without asking enough questions at the time? I get that they were trying to hide their funding. Seems like it would have been, you just don't write that story. It seems pretty obvious that if your reporter comes to you with this story, you just don't write the story. Or maybe you actually dig deeper and you find the story is that labor is running an op to silence people in the United States and narrow the boundaries of acceptable speech in the United States. Maybe you would have stumbled on to that pearl of a story before Dropsite ran it in 2025. Maybe you could have had that in 2020. That would have been fun, wouldn't it? I'm waiting to see, honestly, if Donald Trump comments on this story, because again, we're talking about a very powerful person in the United Kingdom, directly implicated in this, not just the prime minister, but the prime minister's chief of staff. So I think there's more to see. There's more to come on this particular story, but I had to talk about it because that instance, 2020 was a crazy year, but journalists after 2016 were steadily building up to that fever pitch by demanding, for example, corporations boycott Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson and boycott Fox News. What's the implication of that? It's a corporation saying, or it's a journalist saying, I want the corporation to act to limit these other media figures' speech. I want them, it's whether or not you like the speech. The fact of the matter is you had journalists being like, Pfizer is boycotting Laura Ingraham's program because she was mean to LeBron James. Whatever you think of what's being said, the idea of journalists cheerleading corporations to punish other journalists is just so ridiculous. And I feel like we've sort of come out of that moment. But I also feel like we could snap back into it at any time. So great reporting here from Dropsite. Had to talk about it on today's show. It is a memory that is indelible in my hippocampus. If you've ever taken a look at the nutrition label on any typical bag of chips, you will find a chemical cocktail. It is absolutely disgusting. Seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, vague, natural flavors, quote unquote, and ingredients that sound more like a science experiment than a snack. But I've talked about my experience tasting masa chips and then looking at the back of the bag and seeing just those 3 ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food with only 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salts, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they taste incredible too. Really, really, they do. With masa, you'll feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash, bloat, or gross, sluggish feeling afterwards. Basically, snacking on masa chips is nothing like regular chips. And personally, my favorite flavor of masa is churro. I guess churro for dessert. They're so good, but I can't choose between any of the flavors. They are all so good. I love lime too. If you love masa, then you'll also love Vandy Crisps. And everybody who's listening to this, if you've heard me before, you know that I love Vandy Crisps. I just love all of them. I have a problem. Vandy is Masa's sister company. They make the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips that I have ever tasted. Truly, my favorite flavor is barbecue, but I love them all. So if you're ready to give Masa or Vandy a try, use code AFTERPARTY for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket, so stop by and pick up a couple of bags before they're gone.